A hurdy-gurdy, but with a guitar fretboard. Can that be done? Let's find out. Hello and welcome to part 5 in this series about building a hurdy-gurdy guitar. This part will be about the hand controller. If you haven't already watched part 1 to 4, I highly recommend you start out by doing that here. But let's get started. The hand controller is that control device that sits on the crank of the wheel. The hand controller has 6 keys, one for each string, that you can pull down, and these pull in a bike brake cable, and in the bridge end they pull down the string holders that are attached to the tailpiece, and hereby they pull down the strings down onto the bridge saddles and the wheel. The first thing I did was to take some pictures with measurements of my hand and wrist, and using this gizmo that I don't know the name of to get the shape of my wrist and palm. I then used these images in Fusion as a canvas to design from. The hand controller was the first thing I started working on in this project, and also one of the most trickiest. I have made many alterations and changes along the way. Here is one of the first prototypes. In the beginning I had made the keys the same length, but found out that it would be better to have different lengths according to the length of the fingers. I also discovered that for movable parts like these, 3D printed plastic is not the best choice. So I embarked on a dangerous epoxy resin voyage that nearly lost me my thumb. As a hopeful young man, I collected vintage epoxy souvenirs bought at flea markets. Spiteful tongues would say that they are incredibly kitsch, but I thought they were really cool. Since then I have wanted to play with epoxy, but the toxicity has kept me from doing it. Fortunately, a lot has happened in that area in recent years, with a lot healthier options. So this project seems like the perfect opportunity to get started. I started by making a frame in melamine from an old IKEA furniture. I sealed the edges with a hot glue gun and dispensed the 3D printed keys using popsicle sticks before pouring silicone into the mold. One early morning, just a few days before New Year's Eve, I was so excited to see the results that I got careless while cutting the popsicle sticks free. I know very well not to cut towards myself, and I even managed to think, no, be careful, Nicholas, this is extremely stupid. But I didn't stop what I was doing, and before I knew it, the utility knife slipped and I cut hard and firm into my thumb on my left hand. Ah! Off to the emergency room. The tendon was 95% severed, so I had to be stitched up and subsequently was stuck in a splint for 4 boring weeks. And then had to be extremely careful for the next 4 weeks. It took a total of 10 weeks before I could use my hand almost normally. And it is still not 100%. Here 4.5 months after. So let that be a lesson to you kids. Be careful with knives. Now I am using this mesh cutting glove, probably way over the top, but my hand got quite a shock. So I needed some extra protection to get started cutting again. Anyways, after having dismantled the frame and taking the silicone out, I cut them carefully along the middle, removed the 3D printed keys and put them back in the frame. I then mixed the epoxy resin and sprayed it into the mold with a syringe. The first batch was not so successful, and I learned that I had to make a second air vent where excess air could escape. I also had to install some extra screws through the mold to make sure the two silicone parts were properly aligned. My first experiment with brass powder was also not a success. It looked really cool on the pictures when I ordered it, but the results looked like shit, literally. Gold mica powder turned out much better. Then it was time to clean the keys, drilling the holes in them and polishing them, yes, with toothpaste. And then it was time to install them. Like with the string holders, they are attached to a carbon rod with some grease added. After that I installed the brake cables, which was quite tricky and time consuming. It would have been a lot better to have waited to attach the cables to the bridge before putting the inner cables in. All the turns and twists made it a lot more difficult to get them in all the way. That's what she said. Like I mentioned in the last video, I started out by using normal cheap bike brake cables, but there was too much friction. So I found some rather expensive high-end brake cables from Jaguar with polished inner cables and special lubricated outer cables. Lubrication always helps. Finally, I cut the cables to length and added end caps to them. That's all, folks! See you in the next video about the artistic elements and the guitar support and straps. Please consider liking this video, and if you want to follow my adventurous journey towards building this crazy instrument, don't forget to subscribe. Bye for now.